The name Alaska Highway is misleading. The old Alcan or Alaska-Canada Highway is more appropriate. Only 200 miles of the 1,400-mile road are in Alaska. It's primarily in the Yukon Territory and British Columbia, where it begins in Dawson Creek. The road was pushed through back in 1942 as an emergency supply route north, and also to head off a possible Japanese invasion. It only took 8 months to build, an engineering marvel for the men who built it. It looks like it's going to be bumper-to-bumper RV traffic the entire way to Fairbanks, but that's not true. Once you get on the road, the traffic is very sparse. So stop in, get your information at the Blue Goose Caboose, and begin your adventure on the last great road trip. The road begins in farmland and continues to get more spectacular as you head further north. Beautiful campgrounds along the way like Summit Lake. There are also signs pointing to the old Alaska Highway. I suggest you get off the new highway and take a good look at what the old highway was like, because once you see that, you'll be so much happier that you're on the new highway. Dirty, bumpy, dusty, windy. Each year they straighten it out. Someday it'll be a straight line from Dawson Creek all the way to Fairbanks. The new highway on the left, the old on the right. And I tried to explain to these motorcyclists how much tougher it was in my day, the good old days, when I drove up there on my Harley Davidson in 1973. I had to put cardboard on my legs to protect myself from the rocks and that. And now with the highway paved, any sissy could drive it now. And well, I was sure sorry to see those fellas leave before I could finish my story. The highway goes right through Stone Mountain Provincial Park, named after the stone sheep that live there. You don't have to climb the mountain to see them. They'll come down and just about jump in the trunk of your car if you leave it open for them. They're so close to the road because they want to lick the salt and minerals off the side. These are cousins to the dall sheep we'll see in Alaska later. Dall sheep are much whiter. The large males here can weigh 200 pounds. It's always fun to watch the lambs in the early spring. In addition to watching for sheep on the road, you have to look out for moose. They come down to lick the salt and minerals as well. And nothing ruins your day more than having a 1,600-pound moose come through the windshield of the motorhome and join you. There are many misconceptions about the highway. There's plenty of fuel, at least every 50 miles or so. Lodging, good food, not a problem at all. A good place to stop is the Toad River Cafe for fuel and if you're hungry as well. And it's a really good place to stop if you like hats. I'm not talking about one hat. I'm talking about 4,500 hats hanging from the ceiling. You have to feel sorry for all the cold-headed bald guys up in Alaska who made the ultimate sacrifice here at the Toad River Cafe. Just up the road, Mooncho Lake, 7.5 miles long and famous for its beautiful turquoise blue coloring. Everybody's favorite stop on the highway is 400 miles up, the Liard Hot Springs. A path leads away from the main pools to this beautiful tiered area, cut out of the mountainside by a stream. The vegetation here is different from anywhere else on that highway, almost tropical looking. You'll find ferns and over 14 different species of orchid. The hot springs have always been a favorite spot. The Indians first, the fur trappers later, and modern day hot spring visitors come to soak away their sore-tired driving muscles. The water comes out of the ground at 127 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect place for a soak. Not so good for soaking is the nearby Smith River Falls, but definitely worth a short 2-mile side trip on a dirt road to enjoy their spectacular beauty. We will cross and recross the Yukon-British Columbia border 7 times. In Watson Lake, we see the famous signpost forest. It began in 1942 when a homesick GI put up a sign pointing to his hometown. Obviously, it's caught on. Today, there are over 41,000 signs pointing to hometowns all over the world. At 2,000 feet, the Teslin Bay Bridge is the longest water span on the entire highway. Teslin Lake is over 80 miles long, but averages only 2 miles wide, with incredible crystal clear waters. Just south of the town of Whitehorse, the Yukon River runs through Miles Canyon. Many prospectors chose to portage around these dangerous narrows rather than testing their luck on their makeshift rafts. The town of Whitehorse, Yukon's capital, is located here because this was the last place the big riverboats could stop before having to go through those dangerous narrows. The city prospered on the river traffic, but only the wealthiest miners could afford to travel on these floating luxury palaces. Imagine how it must have been over 100 years ago. First-class meals, adventure seekers exchanging stories about the gold that they were sure to find once they reached the Klondike. In addition to passengers, the ships carried over 300 tons of provisions for the miners that have already made their way north. Gold was left on the riverbank for woodcutters to supply cords of wood that were needed to power the ship's engine. Today, the USS Klondike is a National Historic Site with daily guided tours. The city of Whitehorse puts on a huge celebration for Canada Day, July 1st. The grand finale, the incredibly exciting rubber ducky race. Numbered ducks can be purchased for $5. The first duck that makes it to the finish line wins its owner a large cash prize. Unfortunately, the current of the Yukon is so swift, many of those little rubber ducks are never heard from again. You'll have many opportunities for side trips on your way up the Alaska Highway. You could continue from Whitehorse to Delta Junction. You could head up to Dawson City. But for now, we're going to head on the South Klondike to the beautiful town of Skagway. Descending White Pass Summit to cross the border into Alaska for the first of several times. Skagway puts on its own celebration for Gold Rush Centennial Days. I've seen many parades in my time, but this is the classiest one I've ever witnessed. The town has always had a wild reputation. The Red Onion Saloon, a one-time brothel, carries on that wild tradition today. For those who got a little too wild, the nearby Gold Rush Cemetery is the final resting place for many who made Skagway history, including Soapy Smith, the infamous gang leader who was shot and killed by Frank Reed in 1898. Soapy had time to shoot back, and Reed died 12 days later. They say he gave his life for the honor of Skagway. Today's town of 700 is much different from the town in the Gold Rush days. It was the largest town in all of Alaska. 20,000 people lived here. Today, cruise ships can dump about 10,000 people into that little town on a single day. And many of those cruise ship visitors will enjoy a scenic and sometimes white-knuckle trip on the White Pass Yukon Railroad. The railroad replaced the grueling Chilkoot Trail as an easier way to get to the gold fields. Modern-day hikers like the Miller family from Alberta, Canada, hike the Chilkoot for recreation, and their journey will be much different from the 20 to 30,000 prospectors who went over that pass in 1898. They had to legally carry 1 ton of food into Canada before the Mounties would even let them in. About 40 trips up and down that grueling pass. The Alaska Marine Highway system stops at Skagway. You can drive your RV right on board, and instead of going all the way back to Whitehorse where we started, you can take a 1-hour boat trip across the Lynn Canal to the town of Haines. From there you can drive the Haines Highway north to Haines Junction and rejoin the Alaska Highway. Located in one of the most beautiful settings in the entire state, Haines began in 1891 as a mission. Today, residents of this little town make their money from lumber, fishing, and occasional tourism. The best reason to visit Haines is the opportunity to drive the spectacular Haines Highway, one of the prettiest in the north. At Haines Junction, you rejoin the original Alaska Highway. Here, there will be many beautiful opportunities for camping. You'll also see evidence of many forest fires along the road. The first plant to grow after a burn is appropriately named fireweed. At one time, they tried to fight every single fire in the north, but they soon realized that fire was good for the forest. It regenerated it, was better for the wildlife. Today, they only fight the fires if they threaten property. Back into the Yukon once more, we come to Kulani Lake, the largest lake in the entire territory. So big that to see it, you really need a bird's eye view. Helicopters offer flight-seeing tours over the lake and its nearby glaciers. Although officially completely paved, there are many construction areas. Slow down, the road doesn't get muddy, it gets greasy. It's one thing to have your car go in the ditch. It's another thing to have your whole house go there. The physical cut through the forest signifies the U.S.-Canada border as we cross over to Alaska one more time. To show you how large our biggest state really is, I've superimposed it over a map of the lower 48. But Texans claim that with the onset of global warming, the snow will all melt, and we'll find out Alaska is really only the size of Des Moines, Iowa. The road appears to get better once you cross that border, but don't be fooled. Now you'll hit the permafrost. Axle-busting frost heaves. When you see those little red flags, slow down. If you don't, the nearby town of Tok will be waiting for you with their cash registers open. and more repair shops per capita than any place I've seen in the world. And believe me, there's never only one chip in your windshield. I strongly suggest that before you even leave your house, go into your driveway with your hammer and break your windshield to get it over with, because it will be broken sooner or later. These mechanics work long summer hours to make enough money to support their dog sled racing teams during the winter months. You can make a vain attempt to clean your RV here, but it's really pointless. It'll be dirty again in just a few miles. Stopping at the information center, one of the few places in North America you could still make a phone call for only 10 cents. And speaking of money, I was beginning to run out already. I had to get a part-time job to continue my journey north. I got a little landscaping job, and well, even that can be dangerous up in Alaska. The Burnt Paw gift shop is worth a stop. Excellent cookbooks, Alaskan artifacts, but don't even slow down when you go past unless you're prepared to buy one of their beautiful puppies. Another opportunity for a side trip, we leave from Tetlin Junction and head to the little town of Chicken, 66 miles up a dirt road. We continue on to Eagle, and from there we'll take a riverboat cruise down the Yukon to Dawson City. Now, everybody wants to go to Chicken, but nobody's really sure why. The town wasn't even supposed to be named that. The townspeople decided to name it Ptarmigan. But unfortunately, nobody in the whole town could spell ptarmigan, so they settled for Chicken. That's the entire downtown, only about 50 yards wide. A gift shop, a restaurant, and of course, the infamous Chicken Creek Saloon. Inside, everybody says, "Welcome to beautiful downtown Chicken. Here, everything is chicken decor." The town's permanent population of about 24 can nearly double with the arrival of a single tour bus. Visitors aren't quite sure what to make of the place. They stand back for a while. Locals look intimidating, but are very anxious to talk to you and answer questions. They don't get to meet many strangers up here. And probably the most friendly guy in Chicken is named Dean. He came up here from California, and like those who came over 100 years before, he came to Chicken looking for gold. He lives right on the site of one of his mining operations, and for the other, he needs a wetsuit. Working a river dredge can be difficult and dangerous. A gasoline engine powers a huge hose like a big vacuum cleaner, 10 inches wide. Dean needs 60 pounds of weight to keep him on the bottom from being swept away by that current. He literally vacuums the riverbed. Everything goes up through the hose into the sluice box on the dredge. Most stuff goes out the back, while hopefully the gold stays in the bottom. Dean's other operation is called hydraulic mining. Ponds are built above the excavation site. Water irrigated through pipes and shot up onto the side of the wall. Everything 18 inches and below in Alaska is frozen permanently. They're melting that permafrost. The dirt will fall into the bottom of the hole. Along with it, an occasional mastodon tusk or fossil, sometimes entire woolly mammoths with skin intact. Once the dirt is in the bottom of the hole, it's scooped up and put through a large vibrating sluice box. Gold mining is very destructive to the environment, but they are required by law to reforest and replant it when they're finished. Anyone who thinks they can go up to Alaska and just get lucky and find gold is mistaken. It's a full-time job and very hard work. A good knowledge of geology also helps. But even the good gold miners have to go through a ton of dirt to get only 1 ounce of gold. The good paved road continues fruit chicken, and up to the top of the World Highway. From here, you could drive on to Dawson City, but we're going to continue north to the little town of Eagle, with surprisingly the largest museum system in the entire state. Many of the town's 100-plus-year-old cabins are still in practical use today. Locals get their water from a common well, just like the good old days. Regular and unleaded are both available. Because of its location on the banks of the Yukon, Eagle was at one time a very important supply point for miners. Today, it's a very interesting tourist stop. From here, you could drive again to Dawson City, but I suggest getting on one of those river boats, taking a boat tour. You'll begin here and recross the U.S.-Canada border, a line right through the center of that hill. You'll be back in the Yukon, following in the path of the early stern wheelers on your way to the gold fields. The Yukon is so sparsely populated, the government encourages homesteading. Build a cabin, improve the land, and you'll be able to call it your own. Dawson City's history began back in 1896 with the discovery of gold on nearby Rabbit Creek. The year 1898 saw more than 27,000 prospectors heading here, all hoping to get rich. Unfortunately, almost no one did, because by the time the word of the gold strike had reached the lower 48, all the good claims had long since been taken. Most arrived to heartbreak and disappointment. Many had spent their entire life savings just to get here. The influx of people allowed the town to build up new buildings, running water, electricity, even a telephone back in 1898. In the early 60s, Dawson City was named a National Historic Site. Those not faint of heart can go to the downtown hotel and join the sourdough club. Not sourdough like the bread. Apparently a miner had found a frozen human toe in the corner of his cabin one day. Instead of throwing it out, he brought it to the saloon and made a drink out of it. Captain Bill informs you that that toe must touch your lips to become an official member of the sourdough club. 15,000 people have already joined worldwide. Why not you? Diamond Tooth Gertie's gambling hall began in 1901. Today, the Gold Rush Can girls and Gertie herself still kick up their heels at the nightly shows. In 1971, a gambling license was issued, the first in all of Canada. Tourists line up to try their luck at the table. Our side trip over, we rejoin the Alaska Highway to its end at Delta Junction. Now, some people think the highway ends at Fairbanks, but that's not true. The road from Delta to Fairbanks predated the Alaska Highway by over 20 years. This is the official end, and a long way from anywhere. You can put on a bumper sticker now and let all your neighbors know you drove the Alaska Highway and lived to talk about it. 100 miles up the road, Fairbanks began in 1901 with a small trading post on the banks of the Talkeetna River. Today's town of 85,000 is the second largest in the state. Visitors enjoy a tour on the Discovery Riverboat cruise. Fairbanks is the jumping off point for the far north. We're going to attempt to drive the axle-busting Dalton Highway from Fairbanks all the way to the Arctic Ocean. or at least to the Arctic Circle or bust. Bust is the operative word. Special precautions are necessary. Plastic over your headlights, spare parts, at least 2 spare tires, 415 miles of dirt road each way. Once called a haul road, it serviced the pipeline. It was only open to the public in 1994. It's a road of onlys. It's the only road that goes over the Arctic Circle in Alaska. It's the only road that goes to the Arctic Ocean. And only an idiot would try to drive a Class A motorhome up that road. I drove a Class A up and came back with a Class C. It's also the only road in Alaska that goes over the Yukon River. And this is probably the only time you'll see an 80-foot boat going over that river. In addition to sharing the highway with boats, you have to share it with airplanes. The gates are closed for a makeshift runway when necessary. This road was terrible. I didn't think I could make it all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. Not even the Arctic Circle. I kept asking everybody, and they said, well, if you go slow enough, you'll be just fine. Well, I was going so slow that 80-foot boat passed me. But not one to be outdone. I had to prove I had a boat of my own. And being prepared in the north is the most important thing. You have to be ready for anything. And having a small, inflatable, easy-to-assemble boat is a definite plus. Especially if you're a fisherman, because most people fish from the bridges or the highway. If you can get a small inflatable boat and go several miles up or down river, you'll be able to get to where the big ones are. 200 miles north of Fairbanks, that road crosses the Arctic Circle. We made it to our second destination without breaking down yet. Tourists celebrate with a handshake as they step over the imaginary line. I was very proud to have driven my motorhome this far north, but apparently the handshakes are for paying customers only. Most people turn around here, but I had a new destination, the Arctic Ocean or bust. Hundreds of miles yet to go. The road wasn't getting any better either. I figured I could at least make it to the town of Coldfoot, about 170 miles up the road. It's primarily a truck stop, and the last service is on the highway for 200 miles until you get to the town of Deadhorse. Food, lodging, and fuel is available. Coldfoot got its name when many of the prospectors got cold feet about spending the winter this far north and headed back south. At 82 degrees below zero for a record temperature, those were the smart prospectors. And they never did find those big gold nuggets they were looking for, either in Coldfoot or the town of Wiseman nearby. Wiseman's population of 28 permanent residents is still looking. It's a nice little historic town as well, a museum, a general store, even a telephone, and a B&B as well. And I think more moose antlers per capita than any other place in all of Alaska. If you can't get the football game with your moose antler antennas, a small satellite dish might help. It's at this point that Dalton crosses the spectacular Brooks Range and skirts the 8 million acre gates of the Arctic National Park. They call it the ultimate wilderness, the last frontier of the last frontier. You could walk in from the highway, but to really see the park, you'll have to fly. To do that, you need to get to the town of Bettles, only 40 miles west of the Dalton, but no summer road, only a winter snow road. You'll have to fly here as well. This is the stop-off and supply point for canoeists, kayakers, backpackers, mountain climbers, any sort of adventure seekers you'll find in the town of Bettles. The lodge began in 1950. It's the perfect place to rest up for your next adventure and see the incredible colors of that warm midnight sun. small planes shuttle people in and out of the town. It was here I met Art Mortvedt. He runs the Peace of Selby Wilderness, the only lodge in the entire massive gates of the Arctic National Park. As Art and I flew northwest out of Veddles, I began to truly understand how remote this place is. No sign of humans for hundreds of miles. Perhaps Robert Service said it best. He said, "Here the mountains are nameless, and the rivers run God knows where." The Indians had a perfect name for the Brooks Range because of their high latitude and altitude. They called them the Never No Summer Mountains. Rounding the corner and preparing to land on the lake, I understood why Art liked to call this place home. The lodge is built on the shores of Selby Lake, one of the most beautiful I've seen anywhere in the world. Hundreds of miles from the nearest road, for many city dwellers, the silence here is almost deafening. Art leads tours into the Antarctic during the winter months, but during the summer, he and his wife Dee and their partner Bee run the Peace of Selby. About 8 guests are allowed in at a time. They do all the work while you get to sit back and enjoy the scenery. Food excellent, and every view out the cabin window is picture perfect. No electricity this far north. A small generator can be started to use for radio communication. Wood brought in from the forest for heat. Even the rustic outhouses are very interesting to look at. But don't think you have to rough it out here all the time. After a long day of exploring, how about a soak in a specially built wood-fired hot tub? Canoes are available to let you paddle out into the lake and get close to the family of 7 loons who make their home here. Rest time over, I now had to get back to that dirty, filthy Dalton Highway. The road wasn't getting any better, it was definitely getting muddier. At this point, I was even running out of trees to look at. I kept wondering if it was going to improve at all, and they kept telling me, as soon as you get over that next little hill, the road's going to get a lot better. At 4,700 feet, Adigan Pass is the highest in all of Alaska, the furthest north road pass in the entire world. I didn't even know if the motorhome was going to make it over the top or not. At the summit, I had the chance to watch the antics of the dall sheep. Newborn lambs had an opportunity to practice their rock climbing. Some were obviously better at it than others. I kept considering turning around and heading back, but their energy inspired me, and I decided to continue north. Once over the pass, the road didn't get better again, it got dustier. But now I was in the true tundra. No bushes, no trees, nothing to obscure the view of wildlife. The perfect opportunity to see caribou. And also the long-tailed jaeger, hunting from the sky for mice and moles down on the tundra floor. The Arctic fox was doing the same thing, trying to eat as much as he could before the onset of a long, cold winter. There are plenty of wetlands on the tundra, perfect for the over 200 species of migrating waterfowl. They come here to feast on the bugs that we hate so much. Possibly the most interesting is the plover with its very impressive water dance. Makes me dizzy just watching. Too much caffeine for those guys. The caribou headed to the coast to try and escape the hordes of biting insects. With wilderness in all directions, they still sought shelter under man-made structures like the pipeline. Well, I'd finally made it to the town of Deadhorse, the end of the Dalton Highway. And if you ever want a nice, relaxing vacation, don't drive the Dalton Highway. And once you get to Deadhorse, it's probably the ugliest town I've ever seen. Its whole purpose is to feed and house the 1,500 pipeline workers. You can take a tour of the pipe. They'll tell you about the pigs. There are two different kinds of pigs. Dumb pigs that go through the pipe like this one that just clean it, while the smart pigs also check the pipe for bad welds. An engineering marvel, really. 80 below to 80 above. 800 miles from here to the town of Valdez. Our tour ended at the Arctic Ocean. Some chose to go for a little dip into that inviting Arctic Ocean. Most swims were a very short duration. Others were content just to walk along the beach and see what might have washed up on shore, because you're never sure what you might find out here. Whitehorse. Well, I'd made it to the Arctic Ocean. Well, actually, the oil company won't let you drive that far, but you can put up your own sign by the nearby lake and tell everybody you've been there. We've survived two of the toughest highways in the north. Now we would continue east to the controversial Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Controversial because the oil companies wanted to go in there and drill for oil as well. There's really only one way to see this refuge, not by ATV, fortunately, again by plane. Don Ross is one of Alaska's legendary bush pilots. He worked for the state for 20 years. Today he runs the Yukon Air Service. His office, the spectacular Brooks Range. Not many runways up here, so fat tundra tires are put on the planes to allow them to land just about any place there's a flat spot. Again, not for the faint of heart. One of Don's jobs is to drop off hikers in the refuge. He'll leave them here, they'll check a map and agree to meet in a spot about a week's time. They have to be very careful when they do this. Weather can cause delays. And you don't want to get lost here. At over 19 million acres, this is the largest wildlife refuge in North America. Even out in the middle of nowhere, Don runs into a pilot friend. He's landed here to do a little airplane camping in one of the beautiful deserted valleys. Because of the refuge's large size, Don stashes fuel at many points along the way. Another thing you don't want to do up here is run out of gas. The refuge is home to the massive 150,000 member porcupine caribou herd. Don shuttles photographers around trying to keep one step ahead of the herd. very difficult because sometimes they migrate over 3,000 miles a year, the longest migration of any land mammal. There are bills in Congress today that will allow drilling in the refuge. There's also a bill that will aim at wilderness for permanent protection. It'd be a shame to lose one of our last true wild places. Some call it the American Serengeti. We've driven as far north as humanly possible. Now we have to head south, back out of the land of the midnight sun. Next stop, Denali National Park. With a permit, you can drive your RV 30 miles into the park, up the road that's usually closed to the public. Here you'll find a rustic campground. If you come in early June, you might be surprised with a late snowfall. Because of its high elevation, winter lasts a long time here. But eventually, by mid-June, the snow begins to melt for good. The sky begins to clear. If you're very fortunate, you might get a glimpse of Denali, Mount McKinley, 20,000 feet high, the highest mountain in North America. If you don't see the peak, don't feel too badly. 60% of the people who visit the park never see the top of that mountain because of its almost constant cloud cover. Spring begins to wake up the animals and they're all hungry. The poor ground squirrel is the bottom of the food chain, hunted from above by the massive golden eagle and from below by the always hungry grizzly bear. This backhoe with a mouth will move 1 ton of dirt to get a 3,000 calorie ground squirrel snack. Some of the animals in the park are more difficult to spot than the mountain. Consider yourself very lucky if you see one of the 150 wolves that call the park home. Even luckier if he wants to come up and shake hands with you. Spotting a wolf reminds you that you have entered a truly wild place. Over 2,500 dall sheep inhabit the park. If you come in the springtime, you'll be able to spot them at lower elevations. You'll also see the lambs, feeding on vegetation after being born for only a week. And there are a few animals in the world more interesting to watch than these high-energy kids. They like to practice their rock climbing with adult supervision. They also love to practice butting heads. Some take it more seriously than others. Sometimes they just like to practice. Being fast is very important. Running full speed like this across the mountain may look like horseplay now. Later, it could mean the difference between life or death. The grizzly bear has no chance to catch these healthy sheep. The animal that has the most to fear from that hungry bear in the spring is the moose. After giving birth to twins, the mother is very weak and cannot protect her young, who can hardly walk themselves. All her senses are on constant alert. Nature has provided that all the moose in the park have their calves within a 1-week period. So hopefully some will survive. But even at that, 90% of the babies will not make it to summer. Summertime brings the tourist. 1 million. The most popular spot in all of Alaska. But don't think there isn't room for all these tourists. The park at 6 million acres is as large as the state of Connecticut. Tourists are loaded on buses, driven out into that closed road area to view the animals from there. The park was not set aside for the big mountains, surprisingly enough. It was set aside for the wildlife, one of the last intact ecosystems in the world. But even here, you might run into the occasional traffic jam. Fortunately, it's only a ptarmigan traffic jam. The only bigger traffic jam is when the bus stops after coffee break. Jed Jerkowski is one of the park's seasonal rangers. He winters in Maine. During the summer, he lives in a modest cabin inside the park boundaries. His job is to patrol the road, trying to keep visitors and animals out of each other's way. They've done an amazing job with that. Not one recorded bear fatality in the entire park history, while Glacier Park, Montana has bear fatalities just about every summer. He listens to excited hiking stories about grizzly encounters, but primarily Jed answers questions from the visitors, and most of those questions are about the animals who inhabit the park, like that little ground squirrel we saw earlier. The marmot suns itself on a sunny cliff. A true hibernator, he spends 3/4 of his life in his winter den. Beavers constantly work on their dens and ponds with a beautiful office to work at. There are 2,000 moose in the northern part of the park alone. Moose are the largest member of the deer family, weighing up to 1,600 pounds. Don't let their size fool you. They can run 35 miles an hour. More people are injured by moose each year than by bears in Alaska. Caribou running full speed across the tundra for no apparent reason. Perhaps they're running from the constant biting flies. It's difficult to watch as they're sometimes literally driven crazy by these insects. As we drove through the park, I asked Jed, where does an 800-pound grizzly bear sleep? He said, anywhere he wants to. It's the bears people come here to see. Not as large as their coastal cousins who gorge on salmon and can weigh up to 1,500 pounds. These interior grizzlies average about 600 pounds. Still a large bear. Cubs are born in the safety of the winter den, 1 pound at birth. They will spend 3 summers with their mother, learning the ways of the forest. Bears are omnivores. They eat grass, ants, honey, flowers. They will eat meat, but are not the fierce meat-eating predators as portrayed in books and movies. In fact, they're 80% vegetarian. A very blonde cub eats grass with its mother by the streamside below. Suddenly startled, they ran up the side of the hill as quickly as possible. Looking back to see what had scared them, there was not one other bear, but 4 grizzlies had moved into their feeding territory. They could only watch as their grass was getting eaten. Mother gave one of the cubs a lesson in manners. A mother and 3 3-year-old cubs, almost as large as her. 6 bears in one shot, and Denali out in the background. The 4 finally moved off for an afternoon nap. At least they tried to sleep. There's always one troublemaker in every family. It wouldn't be long before all the bears were heading off for a long winter's rest. August 25th, snow was already beginning to come down the mountainside. Fall was here. The valley floor was changing colors. So were the ptarmigan, their feathers turning white for camouflage during the winter months. The golden eagle, born just that spring, had fledged the nest and was now on its own. It would soon be heading south for the winter. The caribou began losing the velvet on their antlers, preparing for the mating season. The magical images of Denali would linger into the long, cold winter nights. Although covered with clouds 60% of the time, every once in a while you'll get a crystal clear day. If you're lucky enough to be here then, head for the nearest airport and a flight seeing tour of Denali. Get up close to that 20,000-foot peak. You'll fly into the Don Shelton Amphitheater. Planes are equipped with skis. They land on the glaciers. As from here, climbers will attempt their ascent on the summit. Most tours leave from the quirky little nearby town of Talkeetna, about 3 hours south of Denali headquarters. Welcome to beautiful downtown Talkeetna, kind of like Chicken. A normal looking enough place, stores, historic buildings, some unusual decorations to be sure. But on the second weekend in July, this town gets a little topsy-turvy. It's time for the annual Moose Dropping Festival, and everybody goes a little crazy. They don't actually drop a moose from a helicopter, as that name might imply. It's what they do with the droppings that's so unusual. How about some mistletoe over your doorway for the holidays? Moose dropping earrings are very popular with the ladies. Moose potpourri to make that living room smell just right. They know where they stand here in Talkeetna, and they must have a lot of spare time to think about all this. Moose dropping toss is fun for the kids. The grand finale happens on the last day of the festival over at the VFW Hall. You can purchase a numbered moose dropping, just like the yellow ducks we saw in Whitehorse. 1,000 are delicately put into an empty potato sack. The VFW members take this very seriously. The sack is then attached to a hot air weather balloon. The crowd grows anxious with anticipation. A lucky onlooker is chosen to pull the string, releasing the droppings at just the right time. The balloon is let go to the exact correct height. I've talked to people who have been to the Super Bowl, and they say it is nothing compared to the excitement at the Talkeetna moose dropping. You can cut the tension with a dull butter knife. The command is finally given to drop the stuff. Moose droppings plummet towards the earth. The ones that land closest to the X that marks the spot win the grand prize. To the victor go the spoils. The rest will have to wait until next year. South of Talkeetna, Anchorage is the only true metropolis in Alaska, home to over 285,000 permanent residents. Sidewalk cafes, ethnic restaurants, a theater group, an opera, a symphony. A real town, but still with a frontier attitude. When Anchorage's residents get tired of the hustle and bustle of that thriving metropolis, they head south on the Seward Highway, right along Turnagain Arm, which got its name from Captain Cook. He was searching for the Northwest Passage. He never found it, but he kept having to turn again, and that's how it got its name. The road leads right to the spectacular Kenai Peninsula, the playground in Anchorage's backyard. The main attraction is the Kenai River, with a spectacular blue coloring due to the minerals in the soil of the riverbed. The river attracts rafters by the thousand and salmon by the million. It's amazing any of these salmon make it all the way back up this river to spawn. In fact, only 1 out of every 4,000 salmon eggs reach adulthood. They're born here, they swim down to the ocean. Several years later, they come back to lay their eggs and die. Predators are everywhere, including the two-legged kind. The Kenai is absolutely the best salmon fishing river in the world. The Great Alaska Fish Camp sits right on its banks. Kathy's parents homesteaded this land back in the 1940s, before there is even a road to the Kenai. Today, the lodge sits on the original homestead site, overlooking the Kenai and Moose River below, the Kenai Mountains in the distance. Visitors are pampered with excellent food, drink, and cigars as they try their luck for some of the largest freshwater game fish in the world. The smaller rivers on the peninsula, like the Kasilof, don't allow engines. Drift fishing is popular. Guides row the boats down the river. You share it where it gets close to the road with hundreds of other fishermen trying their luck. Our guide had to work very hard that day for a small king. Motors are popular in the big river. You sit above the salmon hole and let the lures drift back. The salmon don't eat once they hit fresh water. What you're doing is trying to irritate them, trying to get that lure right in their face so they bite it. Once they do, then you have a fight on your hands. Make no mistake about it, these fish are big. This one, just a baby compared to the record 97-pound king salmon caught on this river. But still, at 45 pounds, this fish is enough to feed the entire camp. And that is why people come from all over the world to fish the Kenai. If you don't want to fight for your dinner, you might try digging for it. The beaches along the peninsula are excellent for clamming. You'll do that in the shadow of these still active volcanoes across the bay. A side trip to the village of Ninilchuk is a good idea. The name means peaceful settlement by the river, reminding us of Alaska's Russian heritage. Homer is the end of the peninsula. The Spit is the end of Homer, a sandy 4.5-mile extension sticking out into the bay. It's world famous for fishing and also infamous for the Salty Dog Saloon. It opened its doors back in the late 1800s and is slowly sinking into the ground. One of the most unusual places in Alaska where fishermen and locals hang their hats and everything else. A large commercial fishing fleet does well here, but so do charter boats with a booming business of fishermen trying to best the world record halibut that was caught here, weighing 460 pounds. These fish are just small fry compared to a large one. When you get tired of catching fish, you can take a short boat ride from the end of the spit to Halibut Cove, an artist community. People build their homes on stilts, about 80 permanent residents. Docks float up and down with the fluctuation of the tides. There are several excellent art galleries here, plus a very good restaurant with a picture-perfect view. Once back to the peninsula, a trip to Seward is in order, the only town on the south side of that peninsula. Again, just like Talkeetna, a very normal-looking place. That is until the 4th of July, when they have their celebration. A typical small-town parade is followed by the Wild Mountain Marathon, the second oldest marathon in North America outside of Boston. Kamikaze racers run up a 3,000-foot 2-mile course as quickly as they can, then hurtle themselves down at breakneck speed. Having a hospital at the bottom of the racetrack is not a bad idea. The race started many years ago when one old-timer bet another he could make it to the top of that mountain and back down in less than an hour. Well, the old-timer lost that bet, but today the record for men is 44 minutes, and the women are closing in fast. It's a dirty, filthy race, but apparently someone has to run it. For those who think it's always cold in Alaska, it was 92 degrees on the 4th of July. Water was welcome at the end of this grueling race. The town is also home to the Alaska Sea Life Center, built by Exxon as part of the settlement for the Valdez oil spill. This first-class wildlife research center allows you to get up close to the birds that inhabit the rocky coastline, including everybody's favorite, the comical-looking tufted puffin. He kind of sounds like a cat stuck in a blender. You see these animals in their natural habitat. Boat tours are available to the beautiful Kenai Fjords National Park. Sea lion colonies, bird rookeries, and an up-close look at the Holgate Glacier. If it's glaciers you come to Alaska to see, our last stop is for you. Heading to Valdez on the Glen Highway, where the glaciers come almost up to the side of the road. From the summit of Thompson Pass, we descend 3,000 feet to sea level and head through Keystone Canyon with its beautiful waterfalls, one of the most scenic drives in the entire state. Called the Switzerland of North America because of its beautiful setting, Valdez is home to 4,000 permanent residents. They make their money from the oil terminal, from fishing, and from tourism. Many tourists enjoy a thrilling flight-seeing ride over Prince William Sound and its nearby ice fields. The incredible dark blue color of the ice is caused by it being frozen for so long and so solid, there's no oxygen left inside. The helicopter lands at the base of Shoup Glacier for an up-close look. The town became famous with the tragic 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill, the largest in U.S. history, over 11 million gallons. The spill did not take place here in Valdez. The tanker had just loaded up at the terminal, the end of that 800-mile pipeline we saw starting back in Prudhoe Bay. The ship ran aground on nearby Bly Reef. The spill fouled 1,300 miles of beaches, from here all the way to Kodiak Island and beyond. The cause and effects are still being debated today. The once pristine Prince William Sound was devastated. The sound provides critical habitat for the stellar sea lion. The bulls fight for space on the crowded beaches, weighing up to 2,200 pounds, 14 feet in length. Over 3,000 sea otters were immediately killed after the spill. They're struggling to make a comeback. The same for the bald eagle, whose population here was decimated. Glaciers are everywhere you look. Hanging glaciers from the mountainsides, tidewater glaciers like the Mears. The ship pulls right up to the face of that glacier while all the tourists stare as hard as they can, trying to make that ice break or calf. You can grow old waiting, but sometimes you're rewarded with at least a little something. As we get closer to the Columbia Glacier, the captain has to be careful for the increasing number of icebergs. To be officially called an iceberg, the portion sticking out of the water has to be larger than the size of the average house. A smaller piece of ice, about the size of an average car, is called a growler. It's called that for the sound it makes as it washes up on the rocky beaches. The Columbia calves millions of tons of ice each year. Our boat stops at appropriately named Growler Island for lunch. There's also a wilderness camp on that island. You can get off the boat and stay for several days to explore the surrounding area. You'll have incredible views of Prince William Sound right from the front porch of your rustic cabin. The island is also home to the northernmost rainforest in all of Alaska. Pieces of ice, every shape and size, can be found washed up along the beach. The oyster catcher makes its home on remote islands where predators are few, using its long beak to get shellfish from between the rocks. Nancy Lethko and her husband Jim run the wilderness camp on the island. Kayaking allows her to get close to the sea lions and otters who inhabit this area. Sometimes those otters are more curious about you than you are about them. Cute and cuddly looking maybe, but you wouldn't want one of these 120-pound adults crawling into the kayak with you. The Lethkos have written many books about the Sound's geology, wildlife, and history. They are considered the world's foremost experts on this area. Nancy's husband Jim takes out tours on their sailboat. He has an ingenious early warning signal system for icebergs. He's taught his collie to bark whenever a big piece of ice gets close. kayaks will allow us to explore the iceberg-filled bays. Doing this at high tide would be extremely dangerous. A large iceberg could easily crush one of those small kayaks. But at low tide, they're anchored to the bottom, which allows us to move freely and safely between them. Paddling through this icy maze on a sunny day is like visiting another world. On dry land, we can get an overview of the entire glacier, which is constantly changing. The sounds advancing glaciers coming from the mountains to the ocean average only about 1 mile every 100 years. This Columbia Glacier began a drastic retreat back in 1984, and within the next 20 years, it's expected to move about 15 miles up and out of that sound. Scientists believe this is cyclical and not the effects of alleged global warming. Our trip to the sound over, it's time to head back home. Our adventure finished. For now. Like its glaciers, Alaska continues to change. But with careful planning, man and nature should be able to coexist and preserve this spectacular wilderness for future generations. Now there's only one thing left to do: get in the motorhome and drive all the way back south.